Hello guys, welcome to United's Glory. In this video we are going to discuss the current problems concerning David De Gea. Manchester United returned to Premier League action in a match against Tottenham, which ended 1-0. Probably a fair result upon reflection, but you cannot look past the fact if De Gea had made what can only be described as a routine save from Steven Bergwijn, then Manchester United would have left that match with all of the spoils, all 3 points, which would have put us in a prime position to capitalise on Chelsea's upcoming tough fixture list. However, I'm not putting this goal solely down to David De Gea. Of course, Luke Shaw's lackadaisical header and Harry Maguire getting caught flat-footed obviously also contributed to Steven Bergwijn's goal. But you expect David De Gea to be making that save. It was actually a poor finish from Steven Bergwijn. Now, the reason David De Gea is the centrepiece for this video is not because this is a rare mistake. This is starting to become common within David De Gea's game. Since the World Cup in 2018, David De Gea in the Premier League has gone on to record the joint most amount of mistakes that have led to goals against, recording 7 in total in the Premier League alone. This, for a top club, is scandalous. The reason David De Gea gets empathy is because he has won the Sir Matt Busby Player of the Year 4 times, a record 4 times for a Manchester United player, where it's safe to say that because of David De Gea, Manchester United didn't plummet to the depths that were potentially there for them. David De Gea, especially with his shot stopping, was simply sensational and often kept us in games. So that's where the empathy for David De Gea comes from. He seems to have a back catalogue that ultimately has given him leeway for making mistakes. However, this has to stop. The bar cannot be lowered for any player. Sentiment has no room in football. If I take you back to, say, Peter Schmeichel, sure, you'd probably get the odd mistake, maybe 1 or 2 mistakes a year, but it was rare. Now, I'm by no means saying that Peter Schmeichel was as good of a shot stopper as David De Gea. David De Gea is something else in that regard, and Peter Schmeichel was a good shot stopper, and the game has moved on since Peter Schmeichel. However, Schmeichel's all-round game as a goalkeeper far surpasses that of David De Gea if you take out David De Gea's shot-stopping ability. And if we want to bring it to a more modern Manchester United keeper, obviously there's Edwin van der Sar, who once again was a great shot-stopper, probably not at the level of David De Gea with his cat-like reflexes. However, Edwin van der Sar's all-round game, once again, for me, was a lot better than David De Gea. By all means, let me know down in the comment section if you think David De Gea was at the level of Peter Schmeichel and Edwin van der Sar. What I would also like to add to that argument is that, well, Schmeichel and Edwin van der Sar were both playing in title-contending teams. You could argue the defences were better, but they were playing in bigger moments, whereas David De Gea's best form, I know he did win the title in 2013, but his best form came when Manchester United were at rock bottom after the departure of Sir Alex Ferguson. Both Peter Schmeichel and Edwin van der Sar were consistent in their all-round game, and their concentration was impeccable, meaning that they really only made 1 or 2 mistakes a season, if that. Now, it's great to have a superb shot stopper like David De Gea. It certainly helps the highlight reel for Manchester United's games, but ultimately I prefer a more consistent, reliable goalkeeper than somebody who's going to do something out of the ordinary if it means we win more games. Now, Manchester United's style has changed recently. Unlike a few years ago, David De Gea doesn't have the catalogue of shots coming at him as he did. So whilst many people might put it down to his concentration, I believe it's certainly pulling out other weaknesses in his game, like the control of his area. He has great control of his line, but his control of his area, especially on set pieces and corners, leaves a lot to be desired. Sure, he's far better than the David De Gea at set pieces and corners in control of his area that we saw when he first came to Manchester United. He was making a catalogue of errors back then. However, it still isn't at top-level goalkeeping, and his world-class shot-stopping often bails him out if it does go wrong. Now, obviously, David De Gea wanted to go to Real Madrid a few years ago until we were saved by the fax machine. However, David De Gea hasn't really made a big noise about not getting his move, so it certainly has to be admired. But David De Gea is on a huge wage currently and is making more mistakes than ever, more mistakes than what will be forgiven at other clubs, for example. And with the emergence of Henderson at Sheffield United, obviously on loan, David De Gea's position is more under threat than it's ever been. Of course, I don't want to be just jumping on David De Gea's back, but I have felt this way quite a lot recently, that David De Gea's weaknesses are starting to get shown more and more the stronger our defence becomes. And many people are now arguing with the rise of Henderson, it might be time to cash in on David De Gea as he seems to be on the decline. Now, I don't want to go full throttle on saying De Gea out. David De Gea is still young, he's only 29, he's still got his best years ahead of him. Obviously, goalkeepers' primes come later than outfield players. But if he truly wants a future at Manchester United and he's going to help elevate us to the top tier of the game where Manchester United should be, then he needs to improve vastly, because right now he isn't cutting it. If we want to be at that level and he's still performing the way he is with the mistakes still apparent in his game, we have got to cut De Gea. We've been ruthless in the past. There's no room for sentiment in football. Roy Keane, Van Nistelrooy, Jaap Stam, there's a catalogue of players that have just been banished from Manchester United because we wanted to remain at the top level. Obviously, we are not at that level yet, so there's still time for David De Gea to pull this around, and I hope he does, because he's been a great professional for Manchester United, and obviously he stopped us plummeting even further than what we did after Sir Alex Ferguson's departure. So I have to say I am rooting for David De Gea to turn this around, but he needs to do it soon. He needs to remain consistent, concentrated, and remove errors from his game, or at least minimise the errors. If he has the will and commitment to do that, then I'm sure it will be okay. But if not, then it's probably the best time to move him on, get that transfer fee for him, bring in Henderson. Obviously, we have Romero as backup, who's a great backup goalkeeper. David De Gea's wage and the potential transfer fee we could receive for him at this point in his career definitely doesn't work for De Gea and works more in favour of Manchester United. Manchester United are certainly in a strong position concerning David De Gea. Obviously, the ideal situation would be for David De Gea to stay one more year, stay fully committed, so Henderson can go out on loan again for another year and stay consistent for a number of years. Obviously, he's only really done it for 1 year at Sheffield United, and that is taking a risk. But one could argue it's a risk keeping faith in David De Gea, considering the amount of mistakes that have crept into his game over the last couple of seasons. Of course, if we can get David De Gea back to his best, his shot-stopping best with little or no mistakes, then that's great. I still do prefer a more reliable keeper, and I'll once again hark back to Edwin van der Sar, who was world-class in pretty much all departments. Like I said, not quite at the level of David De Gea's shot-stopping, because David De Gea is simply something else when it comes to that. But I just feel that if we really want to get back to where we want to be, and that is challenging for the Premier League title, we cannot keep being so forgiving of David De Gea and making casual mistakes. I only need to remind you that Alex Ferguson was incredibly ruthless when it came to goalkeepers when we were challenging for the title. Remember Mark Bosnich, who had a good season then got dropped, Fabian Barthez, and who can forget Taibbi, only playing a handful of games, making 1 or 2 mistakes and then never seeing him again. And Fabian Barthez was a World Cup winner who was brilliant with his feet and a great shot stopper. As soon as mistakes crept into his game, Ferguson banished him. Then there was Tim Howard, who made that mistake against Porto in the Champions League. He was ruthlessly dropped and sold to Everton. I'm not saying that this has to happen to David De Gea, but we're certainly in a strong position to move him on if we need to. Because if he's making mistakes at the level we are at now, imagine what kind of mistakes he'll make at the top level. Anyway, guys, this channel is all about opinions, so let me know what your take on David De Gea's current form and whether we should move on from him or whether we should stick with David De Gea down in the comments section. Make your voices heard. And of course, if you enjoy talking about Manchester United, make sure you're subscribed to the channel with all notifications clicked on. And please do drop a like on the video if you enjoy talking about Manchester United. Huge game coming up against Sheffield United on Wednesday. Look forward to a match preview. See you then.